And now we'll take some questions, if that's all right.
Hi, I'm Anthony or Billy. I am from New Jersey, and so it took me a while to get to Texas, but I finally made it here. I'm doing this just by thought. I purposely didn't write something. I spoke a couple weeks ago, and I had a format that I had to do. I spoke at an alcohol and drug awareness rally. But for this one, I wanted to do something that was just off the top of my head. That's why we're recording it, and so that I could check it out. I'm new at this as far as being an author. I used to be in Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was heavily involved in that for a few years. So I did some speaking within the jails and some of the other institutions and all. So I am familiar with it, but it's been a long time since I've done it. So I'm trying to work through the nervousness and that kind of stuff. I know the Lord's going to open up some doors for me. He had given me the inspiration to write the book, so I'm just preparing myself and doing the footwork, as his word says. The book is an injection of faith, one addict's journey to deliverance. They did a nice job on the texture of it and given me a nice cover, and I'm very pleased with it. And so I'm going to put that down so I don't keep moving around. About 4 years ago, I had a dream, and I woke up from this dream, or I woke up and thought of the dream, and it was the Lord telling me that He wanted me to write a book. And at that point right there, I stopped and figured that it wasn't the Lord's voice that I was hearing. So I just took it and put it on the side. And the reason why I say that is I'm by no means good with the English language, spelling. I was very poor in school. I barely, graduated. I kind of failed, for English and spelling by 1 point on that. I had some resentment back to that teacher. Actually, that was the 3rd grade. So that was a long time ago. It took me some time to get through that, but finally I gave forgiveness, and now I move on. About 3 days after that dream, this time I woke up from a dream, and I started to hear the Lord telling me that He wanted me to write a book. And I knew He was serious at that point. And I just was like, okay, what am I supposed to write about? And basically, it's time, I want you to tell your story. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to write on that. And right at that point He started to download the chapters to me. And then I really knew He was serious. So I jumped out of bed, I grabbed a pad and a pen, and I just started to write. And it ended up being 12 chapters. And I wrote to the names of the chapters rather than just writing and then maybe putting in the chapter names. I actually knew the layout before I even started to do the manuscript. So that was awesome. And so how I start out with is from my childhood hurts and pains, and I take that through my addiction, how I got involved in my addiction, what type of addictions, and how I went through that. And then how I went into recovery, and then from recovery, it took me another 13 years. At that point, I came back to the Lord, and then I came back to God, and then 13 years later is when I accepted His Son, Jesus Christ. And then that's when I became born again and started a beautiful journey with Him. And so that's the tail end of that, and then I end it with a chapter of affirmations. A little bit on me, on my addictions and the stories on that is I'm the youngest child of 6 children. I grew up in a family that really did not display their love. We didn't speak the love. We didn't say that I love you of any kind like that. It wasn't until I was 32 years old when I first heard my dad tell me for the first time that he loved me. And actually he was on his deathbed. He was 3 months before he actually died. He handed me a jar of coins, which was to him a treasure, and he wanted to take a treasure and give it to me. And at that point, you know, I'd asked him why he wanted to give it to me, and he told me, because I love you, my son. And that was the very first time that I heard my dad tell me that he loved me. And so prior to all those years, I didn't know what real love was about on there. But as soon as I came to God, to the true living God, I really did start to find out what love was about. And so in my childhood, I felt neglected. I felt unwanted. My brothers did not want me to play with them. I really had no other boys in the neighborhood. I just had a couple girls that were my age. So, you know, I would play with them and, you know, maybe some Barbies, and I was Ken, and that kind of stuff on that. I learned how to introvert myself, my feelings, and I would play and come up with things myself. I learned how to throw ball on the steps so that it would bounce back, so I could practice how to catch ball at the same time, because I did not have my dad to throw or to, you know, to teach me how to swing a bat. I never really got into sports. When I did get into sports in high school, I was always the third, fourth, or fifth string on there, and again, a result because I never really had a dad to teach me. Through the childhood brought me into a lot of emotional states of basically not caring. I really didn't care what life was about. I didn't care to be in school. I didn't care, you know, who I hurt or any of that kind of stuff. It just built and built and built. And when I was 13 years old, I joined the workforce for the very first time, and the real, where I received paychecks. Prior to that, I worked on the farm, picking berries. You know, I ate more than I picked, you know, so, you know, face would be all blue from black diamonds and stuff like that. But as I got into there, I realized that working was hard. And I was starting to get introduced to, you know, alcohol, you know, marijuana, and then speed. You know, at that point, the day age there was black beauties. And that was how I was able to survive working on the farm 7 days a week from morning until, you know, late at night. And I would do that for days upon days upon days. And just to give a sample on, you know, how many hours I would work on the farm, in a week time, I may end up with 120 actual working hours on that. So that's a lot of time on there. So then that got a little bit, a little draggy kind of sense. And I was introduced to cocaine, which was a higher life, you know, to keep me going. And so it just kept intensified from there, you know, just kept building and building and building. And I started to latch on to a lot of drug addicts, alcoholics. That was my life. That was all that I knew. And so I started to bar hop. And when I was writing the book, I had stopped and did a count. I was actually going to name them, but there were so many of my home bars, in a sense. It came around like 72, 74 bars through my time of beginning to drink until I was 32 years old when I actually stopped. That's how many bars were that I hung out in, you know, throughout my state. And there was one thing that I ended up, you know, in my addiction was I swore that I would never, you know, stick a needle in my arm, you know, do anything strong, you know, like that. And when you do drugs, it just intensifies and builds, and your body just gets so immune to what you're doing. You actually got to find something else because you no longer get any feeling from it. And so I would always search for other things to do. And finally, I got to the point that I did the ultimate. And so I started to do heroin, and I started to do meth shooting up. I started to melt down, smoking it. Any way that I could get it in my body is how I used to do it. And finally, you know, getting on there. And I have repercussions because of that today, you know, on that, health reasons and stuff like that, that I'm just standing on the Word of God, believing on, you know, full restoration of the healing from that, And so today I declare that I am healthy and whole, on there, no matter what man tells me that I am. But I have a story, and the Lord wants me to speak it out, and the Lord wants me to share it out, and that's the purpose of writing the book. And so I'm here tonight, to just share that story a little bit, but I'm also, to introduce the new book that we believe is going to turn out to be worldwide, and it's going to be it's going to be an effect on there. It is making its way into jails. It is going into some other institutions, and so far I'm getting a lot of good reports back from that. And it's not only changing people that have a drug or an alcohol addiction, it's changing people who actually have other addictions, on there. And even people that are not being affected by addiction, that they look in there and they feel the pain of my youth, and they too had a dad who was never home. He was a truck driver, always on the road, and they felt that pain through there, and they looked at that I was able to put it down on paper and to bring it out, and here the Lord lifted it out of their spirit and healed them from it. And I'm so grateful for that. And at that point is when I was like, wow, this book is going to go in a wider direction than I even thought that it was going to be on. So I appreciate Pastor Steve for allowing me to share and to present my book to you all. God bless you.
Thank you, Anthony. I want to ask you, could you bring your family up? Sure. Would that be okay? Could you guys come up? And I'd also like to ask a couple of our Edge church leaders, maybe Steve and Jimmy, would you come up? Rich, you want to come up? Come on up to the front, because we want to pray for this family, for your ministry and for the things that you do. Dave, you want to come up too? Come on over.